Warmed up.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Mark. Today is episode 12 of season 4, and I have Taylor from Amplified Nation here. Dude, I'm so pumped to talk to you. This is going to be great. Thanks for making some time.
Hey, man, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. There is a lot to get into today in terms of like the nerdiness of gear, and so many guitarists are going to be in here, and you guys can pop questions in if you want, and we'll pop them up on the screen. Sean popped in, said yes. So go ahead and feel free to pop questions in as we go, and I will pop those up there on the screen, and Taylor will be the Yoda of the day and answer your lovely questions.
Absolutely. Ready to go.
So I always start this show. I kind of am curious about people's journey, right? So what's your earliest musical memory? It doesn't have to be guitar related, but like, what's your earliest memory in music?
Well, it's funny. So I grew up in New Hampshire, and my dad was a professional musician.
Oh,
So
okay.
he has his doctorate in voice, and he used to teach piano, and he used to have, teach voice lessons, and he would run concerts at the local college, direct choirs and all this stuff. So when I was growing up, like music was just like everywhere. There was a piano in my living room when I was 2 years old. Always music on when I was a kid, anything from classical music to like James Taylor stuff to soundtracks, Phantom of the Opera. So there was just like always music, you know? So I was trying to think if there was like an actual memory,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think there was actually a moment, because it was never like, is music going to be in your life? It was more like, how is music going to be in your life? You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So it was just crazy, and, but I did remember this one time, the first time I saw an electric guitar. And it's funny because I think about it now and I'm like, man, it was so long ago. And now it's like such a huge part of my life.
Right.
But we were in the Mall of New Hampshire, and it just shows how long ago it was, because there was like a music store in a mall. It's probably like, I don't know, 85, 86. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And I remember seeing an electric guitar, thinking it was so cool. And I couldn't believe how thin it was. And I like remember seeing the bridge and everything like that. And I don't know what it was about it, but like I never forgot that moment.
Man, I totally remember the music stores in the mall. It's like the other things that there used to be arcades. Does that even exist anymore when you walk into a mall, or do malls even exist? I haven't been in a mall in quite some time, but
Yeah, I
dude,
don't know.
I remember there being like, the kind of Sam Goody type, shops in the malls where there'd be like beater guitars and whatnot. So did you, in that moment, like, were you like, I want to play this thing? Or were you playing piano at the time? And what was going on musically?
Yeah, I don't really remember with the guitar, but when I first like started getting into music, my parents had me play violin.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was probably like 7 or 8, and they gave me a violin. I got some lessons and stuff, and I absolutely hated it. Like, I don't know what it was either. Like, if it was the small body, or if it was just like the lessons or the style of music, but didn't really like it that much. So we did violin for a little while. And then, they started introducing music at school. So they were like, you can join the band and you can do a band, and I was like, let's do the saxophone. I thought the saxophone was cool because it was on like it was on Night Court. You know what I mean? They have like the intro. So I was like, let's do saxophone. It'd be cool. So I did saxophone for a little while. And, I got kind of like bored with that too. And I was a little older. My dad started teaching me piano. So I started like piano a little bit. And like, you cannot learn an instrument from your parents. You can't. Like,
Right.
it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, he was a professional teacher, and it was still like I wasn't practicing and stuff like that. So I felt like it got to the point where my parents were kind of just like, there was never a point where I was like going to do an instrument or not do an instrument. Like I mentioned before, like you were going to do one, you got to figure out what it was. And I remember I found a guitar in the basement of my parents' house that my dad got when he was in the Army. He was stationed like down in Texas, and it was this kind of Mexican looking guitar that had some Aztec patterns on it. I actually still have it.
Oh,
And
cool.
I remember like it was a nylon string, and I remember kind of just like figuring a couple things out. And I was like, you see the guys on TV and stuff. And I was like, man, like this is what I want to do. Like I want to play guitar. So I started messing with that guitar, and like eventually my parents were like, well, this is what you want to do. Like, we'll get you some lessons. And so I started getting some lessons, and then they finally got me a steel string after a while. And it just kind of went on from there, like it just like, I got so passionate about it that it was all I did in high school and like all I did in college,
Yeah.
And eventually I had some other electrics and stuff like that too, and it was great.
What do you think it is that drew you in about the instrument? I'm always curious about this too, because like you said, you could have gone in different directions, man. You could have been blowing the next Night Court theme song on the sax, like if you would have stuck
Yeah.
with it. Like, but what was it about that instrument that really drew you in, you think?
Well, I think there was a couple things. One thing that I've always loved about the guitar is like you can play it by itself.
Mm,
You don't need anybody there with you. Like it's just kind of you can accompany yourself, you can sing with it. So there was that aspect, but I think there was like almost like a feeling that I got when I played the guitar. It was almost like it allowed me to get some of that creativity out, which I
mhm,
never had with any of the other instruments. When you play like saxophone or you're playing what's on the page. You're in band. You know what I mean?
mhm,
They're teaching you stuff, and you're just like it's very literal. But I remember with the guitar, like I was able to, not only do that, like I got like the Hal Leonard books and stuff, and you'd kind of go and figure out you'd play like When the Saints Go Marching In, stuff like that.
yeah, dude.
But then I would figure out stuff like the Beverly Hills 90210 theme song or something, like, and you'd be like, wow, like this is so cool. And I remember, remember the magazines? I think we still have them, but like Guitar World and like Guitar
Yeah.
Player, they would come out and they would have tabs in them, and I would like run to the Jiffy Mart or like the pharmacy and try to get like that magazine right when it came out, because you could get the tab and then you could learn a song that you heard on the radio right
Yeah,
away
man.
without even having to like know the music and stuff. You could just see the numbers. The tablature was great.
Yeah, man.
So I think it was those two things. Like it was being able to be so solo with an instrument, but it was also like it gave you access to like play all the stuff that you heard on the radio. It gave you some creative outlet, and it was just kind of sexy.
Mhm. Yeah, man. There's an allure to it. I felt the same way the first time I saw somebody play one. It was just like, what is that? That's something that you can tangibly just hold in your hand and make those crazy sounds. Like if you the first time you see Eddie Van Halen play the guitar, you don't know who that dude is, and you see him do what he does, you're like, what is that?
Yeah,
Like, as a kid. And I remember getting those books all the time, man. Like the first time there was a Pearl Jam tune, in one of those magazines. And like that's probably how I learned tablature and figured out what tablature was at that time. That
yeah.
was that was huge, man. We didn't have YouTube. Like we
No,
didn't have anybody slowing stuff down and playing it and whatever. But
or
so
like you'd
did
actually go and buy the book. And you'd
yeah,
have like the whole, Pink Floyd, like "Wish You Were Here" or something. I can't remember what the album was, but I remember I had the entire book, and like every song was transcribed in tab.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it was epic. It was, and those magazines, those magazines were everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, you get like you grab the magazine, it had like Plush, or
Yeah,
like STP songs of the 90s. You'd be like, oh my God, or Black would be in there. You'd
yeah,
be like, now I can play this.
yeah.
It's just wild, even if you learn just the intro.
Whoever the cats were that transcribed all that stuff are the unsung heroes of our guitar youth. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder who we should like go back and like somebody should write an article about all the people that during that time were transcribing that music, because it's really a formidable, like, it's like that's how we cut our teeth, man. Like, we probably wouldn't be doing things that we're doing right now had we not really dove in deep on the instrument and learned as a student. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy, dude, when you think about that. So, what age were you at that time?
Um, I was like probably 12 or 13.
Okay.
Probably 14 when I got my first electric. So 1993.
Okay.
That was all when that whole grunge scene was coming out, and there was just so much guitar rock on the radio. That was like the time to learn guitar.
Oh my god, yeah. Oh, let's go there for a little bit because we're both kind of fans of that era. Um, so what was the first concert you went to that was of that ilk, like those bands?
Oh man, I'm not really sure. I remember I saw my first concert was AC/DC,
Really?
which was out of control. Yeah, I was like
Dang.
15 years old. I think we saw him at the Boston Garden or whatever was there at that time, the Fleet Center. And it was wild. They had like the whole lot of Rosie, like the huge
Inflatable.
inflatable. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That was your first show?
First show. Yep.
Oh my god, spoiled, dude. Because at that point, I mean, nobody else was probably putting on a show like that at that time. Like, all those cats like Pearl Jam, they weren't putting on a show like that.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
like
No,
a
that was wild.
spectacle. Yeah.
Yep. So I remember seeing that. I remember seeing Dave Matthews back then too with Tim Reynolds. That was really cool. And then I don't know if I ever really saw too many grunge bands until like I definitely have seen a lot of them now, but like back in the 90s, probably by the end, 99, I remember seeing like the Chili Peppers. Um, who else did we see? Definitely saw Pearl Jam a couple times back then too. So I've been to a lot of live music, but a lot of it was like kind of after 2000, after I
Right.
started living, closer to the city down here in Boston.
Yeah.
How
That's
about
dope.
you?
Dude, my first show was Screaming Trees, Soul Asylum, and Spin Doctors.
Nice.
I was a huge Spin Doctors fan, and I feel like at the time, they were getting a lot of like shade thrown at them because they didn't fit the mold of what was going on at that time. But like those dudes were so funky, and like the groove, I think, is what got me. Like as I got older, I started to realize that like music to me has got to have a good groove first and foremost, like in order to feel good. Like that's what I gravitate towards. So I got really into like funk and fusion and stuff like that when I was at Berkeley. But I think the Spin Doctors were my kind of entrance into understanding like that there's this other style of music called funk. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, but yeah, I mean, after that, dude, I mean, I've seen Pearl Jam a million times and whatever, anytime they come close, which they were supposed to in 2020 come to Baltimore, and we still had our tickets, and then they just canceled. They're not coming to Baltimore now. I'm just like, oh, I've been waiting for 2 years, man.
Yeah, we
So,
were looking at tickets this morning for Madison Square Garden.
oh,
I don't know if they've actually been on sale yet. They look like they were pre-sale today.
oh, really?
So
Okay,
we'll see. But I know they're like a lot of people are probably holding tickets from the canceled date 2 years
yeah,
ago. But when I was like that, when I was growing up in the 90s, I lived in this town in New Hampshire called New London. And it's like a little pretentious back then. And they wouldn't let MTV be on the local cable channel.
really
Yeah, so, like, I didn't get to see, like, a lot of that stuff on MTV. Now they did let us watch VH1, and
interesting.
back then it was all videos, so the Spin Doctors were on there. I remember, he had that white sweater. Maybe it was, like, the Little Miss Can't Be Wrong. I
Oh
can't
yeah,
but it was like I got exposed to all the VH1 stuff, but limited access to like all the videos for like Pearl Jam and Chili
yeah,
Peppers and all that stuff that was happening back then. So, I'd watch it when I went to my friend's house. But remember, like Beavis and Butthead, like they
yeah. Of
thought
course.
it was like some kind of rub people the wrong way, so they wouldn't let us watch that in New London. But they do have MTV now. Um,
Which it's a worse MTV now. I mean, let's be real. I mean, it was way cooler back then.
Dude, it was all videos. I
Yeah,
know.
man. Yeah. And you know what's funny too is like we used to, man, I remember having sleepovers and watching Headbangers Ball. Like I didn't have cable in my house growing up, but my friends did. So like if I would
Yeah.
spend the night at my friends, we'd like stay up late and watch Headbangers Ball and like, get to see all these cool videos. Like Tool. Do you remember like Tool's video for Sober?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh my God, dude. Like how like amazingly artistic and cool and creepy that was when you were a kid.
Yeah.
So dope.
I
And
just
then
I just
go
saw
ahead.
them in Boston a couple weeks ago. They were wild.
I was gonna say, everyone says that they put on the craziest show. I mean, is that accurate?
Yeah, it was really crazy. Like they weren't on any screens. They just played on stage. Like Maynard was kind of in the background in the darkness, and there was just like wild lights. Like the lights were insane. Like all the light shows, coming into the audience and then on the screen and stuff. But it was cool. It was definitely like a weird vibe. Like I haven't really been to a heavy show like that before.
Right.
So it was just like a little eerie,
Yeah.
like so heavy, but it was cool. It was definitely cool.
All right. I gotta go see them. I mean, I haven't really listened to anything besides Undertow. It's been, that was the record that like I really dug, but everybody's like, dude, yet you have, if they come anywhere near you, you have to see them just because of the show is so good.
Yeah, it was pretty
Um,
wild. So what are you gonna do about your Pearl Jam date?
I don't know, man. I can't. So they're not coming anywhere near here, which is so weird because I don't know why they just don't play. They used to play the Merriweather Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland, which is like a huge venue that they totally can play. Like Fish
Yep.
plays there all the time and other bands. I don't know why they didn't reschedule there. So I don't know, dude. Like Paul McCartney's also coming here in June. He's playing at Camden Yards.
Yeah.
So we tried to get tickets for that, and it's just sold out too quick. So
We
I
got
don't
him.
know.
We got him for Fenway.
Oh, that's dope, dude.
Yeah, it should be cool.
That's awesome. His band is so crushing, dude. Like so good. It's just we saw them. They played last time he played at Fenway. I was still living there. Do you remember when he came through in like 2009 or so? I think it was.
Vaguely.
He played Fenway 2 nights in a row. And since we lived so close, we went over and sat on the curb and listened to it the first night, and then we like bought tickets for the second night, and we were mega poor. I don't know how we pulled we pulled that
Yeah,
off.
they're expensive, man.
Oh my god, dude! But they played the same exact set list, so I was a little bit bummed because I was like, it's the same exact show that we heard last night. But regardless, dude, he's a living legend. It's if you can see him, you got to see him. So.
Well, we just went to my wife and I went to New York City and saw Eddie Vedder play with the Earthlings last month. That was really cool. That was like an awesome show.
Was there an opener for that, or was it just that band?
The Earthlings opened, or I'm not sure. Glenn Hazard opened, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then Eddie came on with the Earthlings.
Okay. How was that band? How do you like that record? Did you get it?
Yeah, they got some good songs on there. But dude, I don't know. The energy of the show was awesome. Like it was just a really good show to go to.
Yeah.
I
mean,
like,
he always puts on a
theater.
good
There was like 3,000 people. It was awesome. My wife's a huge Pearl Jam fan, so she was really excited, and yeah, we had a good time. New York was great too.
That's awesome. I mean, and they played some cool deep cuts. Didn't they play like Dirty Frank when you saw them? And like,
they did. Yep.
Oh, I mean, that's like a white whale, dude. That's like that doesn't happen often. You guys saw something pretty sweet. That's killer. Are they? So he played some Pearl Jam stuff, right? I remember seeing some clips besides Dirty Frank. Like they played some other stuff. Did they play Corduroy?
A couple songs. They played Porch.
Okay.
And a couple other ones. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. But
I would love to see
not a lot of Pearl Jam though.
Okay. I would love to see Chad Smith play with Eddie. Like that would be the main reason I'd want to go see that band, just to see Chad Smith play.
He was unreal.
Yeah.
So much energy too.
He's awesome. We should just call him Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell is now Chad Smith, and Chad Smith is Will Ferrell. Taylor, I wanted to ask you about the gear stuff. So like when you got your first electric, what was your first electric that you got?
I had a Fender Strat.
Nice.
And it was made in Korea. It was called a photo flame. So it was red and it had a picture of a flame top under the lacquer.
Really?
Yeah. It was like a Korean made guitar. It was probably like 94, 95. Yeah. Photo flame.
Do you still have that?
No. Damn
it. I was like, can you please post a picture of that? That sounds interesting. I've never heard of those.
I didn't know it at the time. I was like, photo flame. That sounds awesome. It's got a flame top. And then I found out like years later. I was like, that photo, it was a photo of a flame top.
That's so funny. Oh my God.
So I had that, and then I ended up with I remember, I think I sold that or traded it in, and I got a Les Paul Standard, like one of those black ones with like the pink, with the case with like the pink, pink cover.
Yeah. The satin cover. I remember those.
It was $700. And that guitar was like everything. I had that going into a crate amp.
Nice.
That had like built-in. What did the crate have? It had like, I think maybe built-in delay. It had some effects built into it. Solid state. Yeah, man. But I thought it was so cool.
Dude, that's awesome. So was that would that be like you said around 93? Was that like high school time?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Did you start putting a band together right away? Like when you could start playing more?
A little bit. Yeah. I used to jam with some dudes kind of after school. We'd play like Tom Petty and, other tunes that were out at the time. It was a good time, man. I was in the jazz band in high school, which was actually pretty fun, because they used to let us like rip solos and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. And then ended up getting like I kind of put the electric away for a few years and, did a lot of acoustic stuff. Dave Matthews was like really big when I was in college. And so I kind of like, I never fully got away from the electric, but I really got into acoustic and like singing and stuff like that. I had a couple kind of acts, when I was in school, and then got back into the electric, like kind of before I graduated, and put another band together when I was in college with a couple guys. And that was a good time too.
What was the first band name?
I don't think I had one. It was just like, we just jammed.
Oh, okay, cool. That's funny. I love hearing like really super awkward first band names from
Yeah, right. Like
from G.A.S.
Cobalt Blue or something.
Yeah. um, so I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously, like, you own a company and you build these amazing amps, and you are around electronics and you are around creation of these things for us to use as guitarists. At what point, like, so if you're playing acoustic a bunch in college, like, at what point do you start getting interested in like tinkering with this stuff? Because that's like, it seems like such a split, in terms of what you're doing on an acoustic guitar. If you're super into the Dave thing and you're learning how to like hone your skills on that instrument, to like switching to, these hi-fi guitar amps. Like,
Yeah.
what's the evolution there?
So I get into the Dave stuff. I never put the electric away. I never like got rid of all the electric guitars. I was always having it there. You know what I mean? We would jam to the radio or to backing tracks. And I remember at some point I got really into playing electric guitar over techno.
Really?
Yeah, which was actually pretty fun. I got some old recordings and stuff. It wasn't like really, really crazy like drum and bass techno. The stuff that has some melodic structure to it and stuff. And so I kept doing that for a little while, and then I think I bought a Fender. What was it? The Hot Rod Deluxe or the Hot Rod DeVille? I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
One of the 2x12 ones. And I went and got it modded because the volume on those things was like, you couldn't adjust the volume. It had like
Yeah.
you'd have to like barely touch it. So I found out if you got the volume pot switched, you could have a better swing and you could control the volume a little better. So I went down to a mod shop just outside of Boston in a town called Mansfield. And while I was there, this dude had like a closet full of Tolex. And I remember being like, what do you guys do with this? And he's like, well, you can re-Tolex people's amps and people will pay you for it. And I was like, really? Like, how's that whole thing work? And he was like, well, you could buy some. So I bought a little bit of Tolex, and I remember I recovered my amp with it. I made it like two-tone and stuff. So I had this like blonde and like, electric, what was it? The Carolina blue. It was
Oh,
blonde
cool.
and Carolina blue Fender Hot Rod or whatever the amp was. And I was like, man, like people actually pay me to do this. So I put an ad on Craigslist and started like re-Tolexing people's amps out of my apartment back in Medford. And after a few years, I had kind of built up a business doing it, where it was
Man.
just like a little bit, like I was doing maybe a job a week. And we ended up moving out of the city, and I started building my own cabinets. And then I was like building cabinets, and they were selling online really fast. And as I built the cabinet business, everyone kept sending me or bringing me in like all these amps that like legendary amps. Like it started out with kind of like the stuff you'd see on Craigslist, like Mesa Boogies and old Marshalls and things like that. But as I kind of developed the business, like people started sending me like really nice amps, like Two Rocks, Bluto Tones, like all this crazy dumble stuff, vintage stuff, and I got to kind of look and see how they were made. And I got to like hear them and play them and like hear how they were supposed to sound and what I liked and what I didn't like and how they responded. And finally I was like, man, like I should build one of these. I figured out how to Tolex. I can build my own cabinets. Like, let's build an amp. So it was probably like 2010. I started like tinkering around with electronics a little bit. Got some books off the internet, figured out like how to not die, like but
Kind
like
of
really
important.
like but I actually like figured out like how electricity like moves, transformers, like big time electricity, not like tube amp stuff, but like how it comes off the grid. And kind of just like figured out how to build an amp. I used some of the schematics online. I built a train wreck rocket, and it didn't come out that good, but it worked. It made some noise, and I really just kind of liked it. And so I kept going and built a couple more amps. Started getting into the dumble stuff. I made an overdrive special kind of Robin Ford 102 100-watt amp. That thing came out awesome. It was like the second or third amp that I built, and kind of the word got out about it, like that I had these amps for sale because people knew me at that point. Like I was building cabinets and stuff, so I kind of developed a bit of a customer base. And I had a couple guys play them, and they were like, "This amp's great. Like, can you make me one? Can you make me one?" And it just kept happening and snowballed. So we had this. It's kind of like it was like it wasn't, again, like there wasn't like a moment, like it just happened over a long period of time.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, like my wife and I were like, hey, you know what? Like we should start like a legit business on this. Like let's have an amp line and let's go for it.
Oh,
Um,
man.
yeah. So like, she's really well, she has a lot of experience with small business and she does really well at marketing. So we kind of combine that with like my musical ability and like, as my technical stuff. And we were able to get this business going that, it's done pretty well.
Man, that's awesome. So it all started with Tolex.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
crazy, dude. Is that a very Zen-like thing? Do you still enjoy doing it? Or are you like, "Oh, like, I don't like doing it anymore. It's so tedious."
dude, I probably built like over 1,000 cabinets. Like,
That's crazy.
like, I, no joke. Like with my hands, Tolex, like I can Tolex a cabinet in literally like 10 minutes or less.
Woo!
Like
That's crazy.
no time. Um, but I don't really enjoy it anymore. No, like like actually wrapping the cab is kind of fun, but the process of like putting the glue on everything and the
Mhm.
cleanup and, rolling around a 2x12 on a table.
Right.
It got a little old. So yeah, I don't really do that anymore. But I definitely still can.
Man, have you ever talked to Mark Bartel at all?
No, I know he is though.
You should talk to him. He, like, revels. He loves, like, slapping Tolex on. It's like he gets in the zone with it. Like, if you ever go to his shop and stuff, it's so cool because he really takes, and I'm sure you do too. I'm sure you're the same way, just hearing you talk about what you just told with the story, but he's very intentional about, how slick and sexy he makes his amps look. And
Yeah.
you can tell, like, for your stuff too, like, you can see, like, the time and the energy that you put into these things. Like, you want them to roll out the door and you want to get that feedback that, oh my God, I'm in love. Because I see you post stuff all the time on Instagram of like people, just sending you guys DMs about like, oh my God, this is the best amp I've ever played through. I'm so grateful to have this kind of thing.
Yeah.
That must feel like you're just like, that's what I wanted to hear. That's why
Yeah.
we put all the energy.
There
So,
is there is one moment that has never gotten old, and that's after you're done, right? And you put the amp in and you get everything loaded up and you put the back panel on. And when you spin the amp around, that moment, like
yeah.
whether it dude, and like I've done thousands of amps at this point, and like that moment never gets old. But you're like, yes, like this is exactly what it's supposed to look like. This looks awesome, even if it's a color you've done before. So that's been, a great thing.
Yeah. It's so cool, man. I mean, all your stuff looks so rad. Like anytime you pop pictures up, it's just like, because let's be real. There's a little bit of vanity involved in being a musician in terms of what your gear looks like. And sometimes, man, when you just hit the mark like you do sometimes
Yeah.
with those amps, you must be like, "Mm."
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I put as much like importance behind the customer experience as I could. I really want people to first of all, like enjoy the process of picking out what they want it to look like.
Mhm.
So we have like a cab builder on the website. You can choose different colors and stuff like that, and it changes. I've got thousands of pictures on my phone, but I think people enjoy that. But then also like I love having them take it out of the box and like seeing kind of what they picked out and
Mhm.
having it be like so awesome,
Yeah.
having them absolutely love it. Um, so that's been very important.
Yeah. Man. Well, what is it about like the Dumble-esque type thing that you really resonate with? Obviously I've never ever played through a Dumble. I have no clue what that feeling is like to strum just a G chord on a Dumble. And I know that there's tons of people that would say, "Oh, dude, it's like, it's like the amp knows what you're gonna play before you play it type thing."
Yeah.
But what is it? What is it for you like that wants to build the big clean sound?
So there's like a connection that comes with those amps that is really hard to understand and really hard to explain. I had someone sent me number 38, which was a late 70s um, overdrive special that almost got burnt up in a wildfire in California. And somebody bought it. It wasn't very expensive, but it didn't work. So somebody sent it to me. I changed a couple parts. It was not a big deal, but I had that amp for a couple months, and
Mm,
it was like nothing I've ever played before. It was filled with all these crazy old parts from the 70s that you can't get. Like I look for them, you can't get them. And there's like when you strummed a chord, it was like you could hear like there was like definition of every string. Like you
Mm,
could just hear it. And the notes rung out a little bit differently than they do on a standard amp. And I think part of it was those old parts and just kind of like the sum of all things, that may be inside the amp. But I've built that same circuit a million times and it hasn't ever sounded exactly like that amp did,
mhm.
but there's a clarity that like kind of comes with those amps. And there's a response, so it's almost like you're playing the amp
Right,
instead of the
that's what I've
guitar.
heard. Yeah.
It's like the guitar is just like the remote control and you're
Yeah.
almost playing the amp. And they, when you get like a real good dumble and you turn it up, it does crazy things, man. Like you get the controlled feedback. It does that like note, like the note flipping where like the notes kind of flip into feed, like they almost like go to a different place,
Right, yeah.
harmonics or something. Um, and so that response, it's almost like it's very inspiring, when you're playing one of those amps, just hear the guitar in a different way and have like an organic connection to the amp in addition to the guitar,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, do you feel like those amps are the and I get this from seeing your stuff, is like it feels like an amp that you can just take to a gig and you don't need a pedal board.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
you might want a little reverb or delay,
Mhm.
you know, throw
But
those
those
in the loop, smooth it out a little bit.
Yeah. Those amps it just seems like in your stuff and like from what I can see from like anytime I see Robin play through his. Now, granted, he's a wizard. He's not a mortal person
Yeah.
that's playing guitar. So, but anytime I hear that stuff, that's what I'm hearing too, is just like it's almost like the immediacy and the response of those amps seems to be like, and it's how I felt when I first plugged into my 2 Rock, is like it felt like HD music.
Yeah.
It's the only way I can describe it. It's
Yeah.
just like,
It's just clarity. It's like just clearer.
yeah, it's so crazy because then when you see, like, everybody's kind of searching for that John Mayer big clean sound.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's the first person to do that thing, but like there is like this, I've been like pushing my TS circuits away. Like I'm like just not digging like the tube screamer thing that much right now. I don't know
Yep.
what it is. And I tend to kind of lean more on those like really creamy big cleans. But it's hard to be able to do that on a gig too, because I can't crank my amp. It's 35 watts and I barely have it turned up,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's hard. Like with most of your stuff, do you put masters on a lot of those amps?
Yeah. Yeah. I've really tried. I got a lot of guys that are using the amps at home,
Mm-hmm.
and so I try to make these amps that would work well, that would kind of be optimized for home or studio use, but
Mm-hmm.
you could also get tons of gig volume out of them too. So if you get the right taper mix between your master volume and your gain, like you can't just use audio pots, you can't just use linear pots. You got to know where to place the stuff. You got to know when to use half power, when not to use half power. Like you don't need it in every single amp. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, dude, I don't know. Forget my 50. I sell a lot of 50-watt amps. Like they work well at home. You can play them while your kids are sleeping. You're not going to get the response that you're going to get if you turn them up. But you can take that same amp, play it at home, and then you can take it to the gig tomorrow night and get over your drummer.
Yeah.
Still have headroom. If you, I remember I was talking about the Hot Rod Deluxe or whatever it was. Like those amps were so insanely loud, like you couldn't even play them at home.
I
And I
know.
think half of that is a gimmick. So you'd be like at Guitar Center and be like, this amp is so loud. I can't believe how loud this would be if I turned it up. But it's not really a good thing. You want to be able to get those kind of have some control at low
Mm-hmm.
volume at home use. Yeah, man. So I've really tried to optimize them to work in both environments.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you're nailing it there. Let me just back up really quick because there's some people saying hello to you.
Hey,
And
what's up, Ben?
then we were talking about the DC market venues and stuff. It is true, man. Like I haven't been to there's a venue called the Anthem in Washington DC that's apparently like super cool. Like Wilco played, like the Foo Fighters played there and stuff. But it is weird. There's a very strange pockets around me. It's not as cool as when you're living in Boston and you've got like the garden and you've got like, is it still, what's the amphitheater in Boston? Is it
The Orpheum?
the Orpheum? What's the one that the outdoor venue? It's like a corporate name now. It's
Oh,
not, is it Bank of America Pavilion or something?
it's something else now, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's in South Boston.
But so many great venues and like being a big hub. That's the coolest part about when I lived there is I felt like, because I'm also, I don't know if I told you this, but I grew up a Red Sox fan.
Nice.
So when I moved there, it was like the motherland for me. It's like, yes, I'm going to school for music and that's going to be cool, but I was more excited that I lived close to Fenway Park. So, but it's hard around here because there's not a lot of venues for bands to come through.
Yeah.
And I was gonna go see the Foo Fighters. They were coming through Merriweather Post Pavilion, so hence why I wore this shirt today, everybody. But like, just kind of a silent nod to Taylor Hawkins. And it's weird around here, man. It's not a lot of places to go catch big name acts, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Fortunately, we're probably like 40 minutes from the city, maybe less. So, we go in for all the shows. We've got the Xfinity Center, which is pretty close by. We see a lot of shows there. But
Yeah.
it's good for business to go to live music.
Oh, dude, for sure. Awesome experience getting one of Taylor's amps. I would 100% understand. I've never played one, but I've heard nothing but good things. Yeah, RJ, I think, was the first person I talked to. I had RJ on the first season. We were talking about amps and stuff, and I think he's the first person I saw play through one of
He's
these
such
things.
a monster.
Oh, he's great. He's such a nice guy too, man. I mean, come on now.
I met him at NAMM a couple years ago. Got to meet him in person, which was great.
Is that where you guys hooked up?
Yep. Yeah, we were talking before, and it was like 2020, and we're like, let's meet while we're there. And then I had him demo everything that year.
Nice. That's dope.
Yeah.
That's so great. I wanted to talk to you about when we were talking about cabinets. So, and then I'm sure you'd have a bunch of wealth of information to kind of lend on this topic, but I find it interesting pairing cabinets with amps because it does make a big difference. Obviously, it makes a big difference what the cabinets are made out of. What do you usually what are all your cabinets made out of, wood-wise?
Baltic birch.
Okay.
I've been using a little poplar recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any reason just to change it up or trying to kind of experiment?
It's a little bit lighter.
Okay.
Sound is pretty similar.
Okay. What I find that's interesting to me, because originally when I bought my amp, I wanted to get the 212 cabinet, the upright, because I just think behind you right now, those are like the sexiest looking things in the world. As being a guitar player on stage with that behind you, it's amazing. And I remember I was talking to Joey Landreth, and he was like, you don't need 212. That's overkill. Like, you could just get a 112, and that 112 cabinet sounds huge. But like, what is your opinion on that in terms of pairing specific amps to specific voiced cabinets and speakers? And like, how intentional are you about that? Or are you like, if a client calls you or like orders something, are you like, I think you probably like this better? Like, how does that work?
I usually try to talk to people about how they're going to use the amp and like what their playing situation is, whether they're at home or they're gigging. So there's a little bit of that. I don't know. There's not like a ton of, like, if people need a 1x12, we usually just sell them a 1x12. The 1x12 is closer to the ground, so I feel like it has a little bit more thump. You can push it a little bit more, and it's easier on your ears because like you don't have the highs kind of hitting you in the face. The 2x12s are obviously a larger cabinet, so you get a little bit more headroom. You get another speaker in there, which adds your power capability. The 2x12 is nice because the amp sits really high, so it's like easy to dial in and stuff like that. You don't have to like crouch down. And the 2x12, I feel like you can hear it a little bit better because you have one speaker that's close to your feet, so you kind of get the kind of boomy low end from that speaker, and then you get a little bit more clarity out of the speaker that's up top because you can hear those highs a little bit better as they're kind of directly going into your ear space. So those are the two cabinets I sell the most. And then I have an oversized 1x12, which kind of like meets in the middle. So it's just wider than my standard 1x12, but it sounds more like a 2x12. So you get like a little bit more bass. It's a larger cabinet, so there's more box volume. So it pushes like slightly more air. But I think that most of my amps work well with like just a couple different Celestion speakers. So I sell those a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while, like if the guy wants a little more headroom or we want to have like maybe more punch, we look at the larger frame stuff like the EVs, or I've been using the Warehouse WG.S 12L recently. That's been pretty good too. And those are like really stiff, kind of loudspeaker style.
Hmm.
So, they're very representative of what you put into them. They don't color the sound at all. Those old EVs, like the EV12L, you can't get one of those to break up. Like 200 watts. Even a
Dang.
100-watt amp, like it's pretty tough to get that speaker to do anything other than what you're putting into it, which is great for the right guy. Sometimes people actually want the speaker breakup. The lighter frame Celestion stuff can be a little more forgiving. Gives you a different response. So I've tried to optimize all the amps to be pretty flexible. The Celestions have been really great for literally everything. My overdrive stuff, my steel string singer has been good with that speaker as well. But if I do the 1x12, sometimes we'll go towards the EV stuff, and the 2x12s I always use the Celestions.
Man. So you definitely you're very intentional about this then, as far as like what you think would be best with specific amps. Because now that you have several models now, how did that evolve? Like, how much R&D went into like speakers paired with like your different amps?
Well, some of the amps literally took me like a year and a half to get from like an idea to like have an actual production model. I think the Overdrive Reverb, which is one of my best sellers right now, it's kind of my flagship. That amp, I think I worked on for like 2 years. It was
Dang.
crazy, because there was a lot of stuff where I was compiling information and figuring out what the amp was supposed to be, to actually building one. And then once you have a prototype, then you got to bring it to like a production line. So you got to like, basically do all the 3D modeling and figure out how to draw it in CAD, and then communicate all those ideas to a metal shop, and then, come out with a new product, market it, put demo videos together, all that kind of stuff. So that can be a while. The cabinets though, like all my stuff is open back. So it makes them a little bit like more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Closed back stuff can be a little harder, very directionalized. Open back stuff, there's just sound coming out everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be a little bit easier to pair with different amps. And then the speakers took a long time, man. Like I tried a whole bunch of different stuff. I've had pretty good luck with the WGS stuff recently. I've been using that because some supply chain issues with Celestion have give me a couple days without speakers, but I got more of that stuff coming soon. So I have really good luck with the WGS stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, man. Well, there's a question here that's kind of related to this, but like wondering if you could talk about the difference in clean channels of the different Amplified Nation models. Looking at reaching out and ordering a steel string singer this summer.
All right. So yes, I mean I've got 2 clean amps. I've got the Dirty Wonderland and the Steel String Sultan. The Steel String Sultan is kind of like my version of a Dumble Steel String Singer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very percussive. It's super, super high output. When you sync like Stevie Ray Vaughan, where you've got this like almost like a clean lead sort of tone,
Mm-hmm.
where your sound is clean, but the amp is reacting like it's overdriven. So you got great sustain, note flipping. Your pick attack is there. But the Steel String Sultan is very clean, but super high output. So it's like high output, but low gain, very cold and very unforgiving. So it's like not really for everybody. And it doesn't really sound like a guitar amp. Like it does, but it's more like a hi-fi sort of system, where you can hear like the flesh on your fingertips. It's very reactive, very percussive, and that's good and bad, right? Like you can't hide behind it.
Right.
The Dirty Wonderland is kind of more of a standard guitar amp voicing. It sounds a lot like a vintage Fender Super Reverb, where you have that kind of like a lot of like the Mayer tones, like big kind of plunky strat tone with like the big fat bottom end, pretty fat mids. That amp is definitely more forgiving than the Steel String Sultan, and sounds more like a guitar amp and does a few more things. They both work well with pedals, but it just kind of depends like what variation of that clean you want. Do you want the super high output, or do you want to be like in a little bit more of a mellow space? If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I accidentally said steel string singer. Sorry about that. So yeah, when I was looking at your stuff too, like the Wonderland I always kind of gravitate towards that for some reason, just from hearing, people like Rhett or whoever play through it.
Yeah.
Like, that seems like that's more my jam. But I could be wrong about that. That's the thing, is like I don't ultimately as a guitarist sometimes totally know and you know what I mean, can't express in words what I hear
Yeah.
in my head. Sometimes it's tough. Like, how many of those conversations do you have where someone's trying to explain to you, well, I'm looking for this and it's on the tip of my tongue, and like, I think what you mean is this, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I have those. That's like basically every conversation I have with
Right.
customers, you know?
Yeah, man.
You know what's funny is like I've had so many of those conversations that they're actually not that difficult anymore. Like
Mm.
I understand what you're saying. I totally get it, you know?
Cause for me, it's like, it's that clean that's like right on the edge of like hair. For
Yeah.
me, that's what I like, and then I like to push it with, like, like a boost, like a Klon circuit, or like the light speed from Greer or something like that, to like just get it to like over the edge a little bit. But like when I don't want that, and I don't want to stack gain or whatever it is, I want it to be able to dig in. Like Schofield is my clean tone, like,
Mhm.
bar. Like anytime I hear Sco, it's like that rounded off dirtiness, that hair. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So like, which one of your amps is that?
Like any of that the Wonderland
That's what I
series.
thought.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it does the Mayer thing, and that's kind of Mayer's tone too. Like he's kind of right on the edge of breakup. Um, so that it's definitely the amp. You know what changed like a lot of things for me was really just kind of figuring out how to use your volume control, you
Hmm.
know. And so when you get your amp to that point, like being able to dial the guitar back and having something left, it's almost like you have something left in the tank, which is right at your fingertips, you know. So
Yep.
then if you want to push it a little bit harder, you have the ability to, you know. I remember when I first started out playing guitar, just be at 10 all the time,
Yep.
you know. So it was like the volume control's there for a reason, you know. And like, dude, Bonamassa, he just keeps his amps on overdrive and controls them with the volume of his Les Paul.
That's crazy. That
Yeah.
is so crazy. I mean, I guess that's a nice thing about having PAFs too. It's just
Oh
like
yeah,
being able
low
to
output.
roll it back and like not have it be like screaming eagles like the whole time kind of thing. Um, I think that's a good point too for a lot of guitarists, is like, when you're trying an amp out in a store or wherever you should be doing that. And you should probably bring your instrument, obviously, to see how it reacts with it. But like, a lot of people don't realize how many different tonal variations you can get, even with different pedals. Like,
Yeah.
you know how when you roll the volume off on a fuzz, how you can get it to be that like sitar type vibe almost,
Hmm.
like where you're starving like the circuit a little bit, that bias switch. If on a pedal like Jesse Davies Silicon Fuzz, like if you back the bias off and you're just starving the transistor, so it's like like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love that, and I learned that from listening to like Eric Krasno. Um, did stuff like that all the time. Like, how's he doing that? Like, what effect is that? It's no effect. It's his guitar volume.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's the craziest thing now. Like, all the different like tones that you can get out of just changing what your guitar tone is or your guitar volume is with a great amp, like you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. I mean, usually when I get set up, like I dial the amp a little bit louder than I want to play, and then I back the guitar off a little bit,
Yeah,
you
makes
know.
sense to me, man. I
Yeah,
don't know.
mess with the tone control. I mean, everyone knows this stuff, right?
Yeah, well, not everybody. I mean, it really kind of. I think it's something that we learn as we mature musically throughout our career. Maybe, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
what do you feel like as a builder now? Like, if we put that onus on you as far as musical maturity as a builder, like, what have you learned that has kind of made you a more mature builder, and like you understand your lane and all that now?
Um, a lot of it, I mean, from an actual building standpoint, like the design that goes into the amps has been very important the past few years, and really just kind of making a product that's not going to break if it, gets in the back of a tour bus for 4 months, you know,
Hmm.
bumping around and things like that. But to kind of carve out my niche was really, making an amp that sounds really great, that looks fantastic and allows you to connect with it in so many different ways, where you can connect with it visually and you also connect with it musically. And then you can get the clarity out of it and you can get the response that you want out of it. And, almost like have it sound like, it's cheesy, but like sound it like the sound in your head. You know what I mean? Like you hear the sound that you heard growing up on the CDs and
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden it's at your fingertips. And, it's just like, I remember the first couple times I got like a really nice guitar. It's kind of the same thing where you sit down with this new instrument and you're like, wow, how did I get so creative? Like I've never played these riffs before. Like where do they come from? And I want people to have that experience with the amp where they're like inspired by the amp.
Mm-hmm.
Just like they would buying a $12,000 guitar. You sit down and you're like, man, I feel so creative right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm so connected to this thing. Instead of just practicing or instead of the way you felt yesterday. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's cheesy. I say it to people all the time, like, I want to change everything. When you
Mm-hmm.
get one of my amps, like I want it to change everything for you.
That's awesome. I love that. That's so great. Do you feel like the first amps that you built when people were like, hey, can you build me one of these? Have you ever been like, hey, give me that back. I'm going to make it better kind of thing. Like, did you ever have that happen in the beginning? Like when you started really getting into it and being like, I know what I'm doing more now. I wish I could have that amp back so I can make it. Have you ever done that? Like, has anyone ever come back? Like your first
Yeah,
original customers?
there was, when I first started out, I came out with a bunch of different amps. I kind of gave them some weird names. I had one called the Hooligan, which there was like this little kind of 17-inch chassis, 22 watts, did a lot of the same stuff as the Wonderland Overdrive. They were actually like super cool, like little guys. And then I made one called the Prime Minister, which I was trying to like, go on a theme with the Amplified Nation thing. I
Right.
only made like 7 or 8 of them. But yeah, like it would be great to get some of those back and just improve them. But what the craziest thing is that those are selling now online for like more than my new amps.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool, man. That says something. I feel like that happens, where like certain builders, like pedal builders, like the whole Klon thing. Like, can we talk about that for a second? Because like I think it's so funny, like how much people freak out about that pedal. And
Yeah.
now Bill Finnegan, being a Cambridge guy, being in town there, I bought one in 2002 for
Yeah.
$300. And I sold it in 2015 for $1,500. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I almost
Yeah.
feel guilty selling this. But, it's got to feel kind of good to builders like you who are like, dude, like people are like, these are like vaunted amps now. People like want these older versions.
Yeah, I
That's
have a pedal. It's the Big Bloom. Have you seen that? It's like
no.
it's a kind of Dumble inspired overdrive pedal.
Mm.
And I had a double one that was in a really big enclosure. I called it the Double Bloom. And again, like I probably made like 10 or 15 of them. And those things are online. I sold them for $450. They're on Reverb right now for like $2,000.
What?
And I don't know if people are paying that, but yeah, it's crazy. I'm like, man, I got to start making those again.
Dude, I remember seeing when you posted some things about pedals. I'm like, I didn't know you made pedals. So that's not a total, like you're not putting all your eggs in that basket at all right now. It's just the amps mostly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I built a
Yeah.
bunch of those pedals. It's not really my thing. Like I much prefer to build an amp,
Yeah.
but I still do a couple pedals here and there.
That's cool, man. It's diversify your portfolio, as Wu-Tang would say, right?
Yeah, right.
Hey, BV. Good to see you, man. Sean has another question for you about the reverb units and the amps. How does the overdrive reverbs unit differ compared to the Sultan or Bombshell?
All right. Well, the Bombshell doesn't have reverb, and the units, like the tanks, are actually the same. The overdrive reverb has a very elaborate reverb circuit. It's kind of similar to the Steel String Sultan. It has 2 different controls. It's got a send and a return, so you can set how much signal you have going into the pan with the send control, which sets your depth of the reverb and kind of your yeah, I don't know, just kind of your depth of the reverb. Then you can boost it back with the return knob. So the return sets how much reverb you have back in the mix.
Mm.
Overdrive reverb has 6 preamp tubes, which is twice as many as the Bombshell or a regular, overdrive special amp. And there's just like the way that the signal is mixed almost gives the reverb a kind of unique way to mix back in, like the wet and dry. And you get this really great brilliance that's very transparent, doesn't add anything to the tone, but the amp is like, it just sounds beautiful. The steel string Sultan, the reverb is similar. It's very, very big. It doesn't have quite the same, mixing circuit as the overdrive reverb, but there's no shortage of reverb in either of those amps. Like it's almost to the point where you couldn't use all that's there.
Wow. And did you design that to have that sweep so it wasn't super lush right away, that you can work it into however you want to work it, wherever the room it is that you're playing in? Because that's what I find to be tough about some amp builders is like it gets too wet too quick. You know what I mean? Like I just want to crack it open a little bit and just have a little ambience, or I want to turn it up halfway and that would be my normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how do you design it?
That send and return, the two knob reverb is really allows you to do that well.
Okay.
Because you can set, like I was saying, like you can set like almost like the dwell or the depth of the effect.
Yeah.
Which is a nice control to have. I think your Two Rock probably has that knob in the back.
It does.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's great when you have that knob. But my Wonderland Overdrive doesn't have it. Like that's a one knob reverb. But I optimize that amp so like there's not really too much. So if you crank it up all the way, like there's plenty of reverb, and the reverb kind of scales with the volume in some of those amps too. So like at lower levels, you may not have as much reverb. Once you start turning it up, more signals going into the reverb pan, and you actually get more reverb. That Wonderland Overdrive is great because it kind of like scales, and those other two amps, they just have so much control over the effect that it'll do what you need it to do.
Yeah, man. You know what's funny, dude? For a long time, I didn't use reverb. Long time. And I don't know if it was because Wayne Krantz didn't use reverb, and I was like, if he doesn't use it, I should, shy away from it because I don't want to hide behind it kind of thing for many years. And then when I got that Two Rock and I heard how amazing reverb can be if you use it properly, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice way to hide.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing is I didn't want to do that. Even like when I went in the studio, my guitar would mostly be dry. And then like all the engineers would always be, can we just put a little on post? Yeah. And I'd be like, all right, that's fine. It's kind of like beef it up a little bit. But yeah, dude, it's weird. Like it's an effect that is so like people take that and tremolo for granted, I think.
I love reverb.
Yeah, me too now.
I like a little bit of delay too. Just like
what delay and reverb pedals would you put on a board if you were going to go to a gig and you needed pedal versions?
I have a Boss digital delay.
Those are awesome.
I absolutely love. I think it's a DD5. That thing is killer.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of delay pedals, but that's probably my favorite. It just does so many things, And then I have like the same Boss reverb, like a digital reverb pedal. And those are my two favorites.
Okay. The black one, the black reverb.
I think so. Yeah. And the delay's white. They're over across the room, but I'm pretty sure that the reverb is white. No, it's black. And then the delay is white.
Yeah, dude, I totally know what you're talking about. Dude, there's nothing wrong with those pedals. They're great. Like those are, I had the, did you ever play through that Fender Reverb Boss pedal?
No.
That had the mix and the dwell on it like a tank kind of thing. That thing was great. But I'll tell you, I sold it when I got the Strymon Flint.
Oh yeah.
I was like,
Strymon stuff is great.
Dude, the Flint is probably, and it's a reverb and a tremolo pedal, but it's probably my favorite pedal that I own. I've never taken it off the board. Everything else swaps in and out all the time, but that has never, ever left my board.
Yeah.
It's just really good. And you know who else makes a great delay is Zach from Mythos Pedals. They had that Oracle analog delay.
Yeah.
That thing is, I mostly just use it for slapback, but it's a great delay pedal. But the new Space Echo stuff that Boss just came out with, that stuff looks really cool. Have you seen that?
No. I don't think so.
Dude, yeah. There's like...
wait, is that like it's kind of a larger pedal? Like almost like a double box?
Yeah, it is. And it's got three... Like they redesigned it. Do you remember like the Boss Loop Station that had the two pedals? They made a Space Echo version of that a while back. That was that two Boss pedal thingy. Now it's different. They're like soft switches.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 3 switches. I think one's tap, one is like, bypass, and then one does this ramp up thing that like the Space Echoes would do when they would get super wacky.
Yeah.
It looks awesome, but they're making that version of it, and they are also making that like typical Boss format pedal version. I think that the Andertons guys just put a video out on that like today or yesterday or something. But it's cool because those original Space Echo units, man, those are crazy. If you open the tops and you see the tape in there, it's all like spaghetti. It's cool, man. I've never been really into delay, but like sounds like you're super into delay.
Yeah, I got a tonal recall. Those are pretty cool too.
Yeah.
A lot of switches though. A lot of switches on those.
Do you ever get like option paralysis on some stuff like that, where you're just like, oh, it's too much?
Definitely. I just want to like select the delay and then set how much there's going to be.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just a couple more questions here from people. Does the amp and gain have minimum reverb? I don't know what that means. You know what that means?
I'm not sure, but you can dial. I'm not sure if that means it doesn't have a lot of reverb. It's got the same amount of reverb as a Wonderland Overdrive, so it kind of scales with the volume of the amp. So yeah, you can get some pretty deep effects with that. You can also just turn it off if you don't want to use it.
Nice. Here we go. Flint is the best. Sounds better than some reverb on amps. I'm telling you, man. If you don't have one, Taylor, you should check it out. Do you like harmonic tremolo?
I had the Lex for a little while.
Yeah, that's a great rotary speaker. You know who uses that or did use that for a long time, and that's why I bought it, is Charlie Hunter.
Oh yeah, nice.
For a long time, he had that Rotosphere on his board for a long time, but then he switched to the Lex. I think he's using the mini vent now. Like, you know how he always had that like Leslie sound in his like tunes and whatnot. So, but that thing's dope. I have it in my drawer over there. It's hard. That's a hard effect to like not have your bandmates hate you after that night if you use it too much.
Yeah,
because it sounds awesome. It sounds so good. Like, you could just leave it on and have it not be rotating that much, or have the brake on, and it's a cool effect, man.
Yeah.
So, and then one last one from Ben. The next one he's getting is the Amplifiers. So
it's a crazy amp, man.
Dude. Well, so I don't want to keep you all night, but are you ready to do some lightning round get down?
Yeah, sure, man.
Let's do it. Do you have anything else that you wanted to kind of tell people about? If there's anything new coming or anything that you don't want to spill any beans on?
Well, I got some new stuff coming, but I'm not ready to talk about it quite yet. But did want to say thank you to my wife for helping me out, Allison, getting me all set up here. She got me a ring light and
look at that.
Get ready for tonight. Yeah, she's great.
Oh man, yeah, you got a nice setup going now. You can do these all the time, Taylor.
I'm ready to go, man.
All right, so here we go. We are going to be cruising at an altitude of 112 BPM for some suspense, and I'm going to ask you 10 questions. You can explain your answers if you'd like. I love hearing explanations. You do not have to do that. You can just burn right through them if you want. First question is always the same: Lennon or McCartney?
McCartney, because we have tickets.
Yes.
This summer.
Oh my God, you're gonna have such a good time. Did you see Pearl Jam when they came through last time at Fenway?
Yes.
Oh, I bet you that show was awesome. That set list was awesome.
The last 2 or 3 times we saw them at Fenway.
Oh man, I think I have the last show. I have the bootleg of the last show, and that set list was crushing. 50 or 100 watts for you if you're going to be on stage. What would you rather
50,
have behind you?
50 watts.
Hot dog or hamburger?
I don't eat meat.
Oh, all right.
How about that?
How about pasta? How about ravioli, cheese ravioli, or angel hair pasta?
We'll go with the angel hair.
All right. Fet or no fet on the amplifier?
No fet. No fet. I like the fet, but well, actually, the fet's nice to have as an option. So we'll keep the fet, but I'd rather play through the normal channel.
Okay. Fenway or Gillette?
Fenway.
212. Yeah, oh, heck yeah. 212 cab or 410 cab?
2x12.
Okay. The Police or U2?
The Police. I like Sting.
Yeah, me too. What would you prefer though? If you could choose to go to a show and one of the shows was the Police and one was Sting solo, Which one would you go to?
Tough decision. I'd probably go to the Police show.
Okay. The Goonies or Stranger Things?
The Goonies.
Ron Burgundy or Ricky Bobby?
Ron Burgundy.
All right. Now, here's the last one. Sometimes it's the hardest, sometimes it's the easiest. If you could take one album, does not have to be your favorite album of all time, mind you, but if you could take one record and erase it from your memory so you could go back and listen to it for the first time again, what album would that be?
I would like to do this with like a zillion albums, but
Pick two.
I always find my way back to the Alice in Chains Jar of Flies EP.
Oh, yeah.
And it's only 6 songs, but I listen to that probably twice a week. So
Okay.
it would be great to hear that one again. And then Dave Matthews, I can't remember, was it Crash?
Yeah.
That's the name of the album.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that one again too. Fresh.
All right, cool. Nice. So Dave, for you, what record did you come in on Under the Table?
Yeah.
Is that when you entered? Okay. So yeah, so you've been there since the beginning. So is it his music, I mean, his band has like changed and transformed so much through the years. But what of his records, like of his whole discography, is that the one album that you would choose as a desert island record?
Yeah, it was like one of those first 3 albums. It was Under the Table and Dreaming, right? And then Crash. And then Under the Crowded Streets.
Yeah, Before These Crowded Streets, I think.
Before These Crowded Streets. Yeah. And I lost after that. I was kind of out. Like I didn't do any Dave for a while, but those first 3 albums were amazing.
Yeah. That Before These Crowded Streets, that's so great. And then his solo album, wasn't that solo album like Some Devil or something like that? Like, do you remember that when that came out? It was like Don't Drink the Water. Remember that track?
Yeah. That was a good
There's Blood in the Water. Yeah. There's that album's pretty good, man. But I haven't my wife is a Dave fan, but I've never seen them. But he played, talk about a crazy, and I talk about this on the show sometimes, but do you remember the Tibetan Freedom concert when that happened?
No.
You remember when that?
Well,
so
what was that?
That was a show. So they came through RFK Stadium in DC, and craziest bill you'll ever see. Dave Matthews, Pearl Jam, Beastie Boys, Radiohead, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the list goes on, my friend. Like, there was so many bands on that bill. I think that I don't know if Soundgarden was on that tour or not, but I went to that show. I was probably 17 years old, and I went with my older sibling, my sister. But man, all in one day, all those bands in
wild.
one day, dude. Yeah, and they had two stages set up. So like, you know, as soon as the Beastie Boys were done playing, then it was whoever was next, whatever, and they just kind of ping pong back and forth all day. But I think Radiohead might have closed the show out, and that was OK Computer time. That was like right when that record came out, and that was the first time I saw Radiohead, and I was just like, this is like the Pink Floyd of my generation, but like at such a deeper level.
Yeah,
it was. Have you seen those dudes?
No,
man. No. It's not. I know it's not for everybody. Radiohead's not for everybody, but man, like they're a crazy band. Just
have you heard the Easy Star All Stars Radio Dread?
No,
they're a reggae band that has an album where they covered an entire Radiohead album. It's called Radio Dread.
What?
It's so cool. It's like dub reggae. I'll send it to you.
Dude,
it's amazing.
That's crazy. My buddy Sean that was on last week, Edge of Breakup, he was talking about there's I can't remember. I listened to it this past week. But it's like a solo piano dude that just like does all like Radiohead tunes on this one record.
I met my wife at a Easy Star All Star show.
Oh man, that's great.
Back in Brighton at the Harper's Ferry. Which is probably here when you lived here.
Oh man, that's great. Oh man, have you hang out like? Have you ever like gone down and like go see crazy jazz at Wally's just randomly or anything these days? No,
man. We used to go to Riles.
Yeah, Riles Jazz Club.
And, yeah, that place was great in Emmett Square.
Yeah.
And what was the other place? The Cantab.
Oh yeah,
I remember that place too.
Oh man, Well, I've kept you too long. Dude, Taylor, thanks so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can check you out. You have a presence all over the place, but tell everybody where they can find you.
Amplifiednation.com or at AmpNation on Instagram. And I think Facebook is also Amplified Nation.
Cool. Sweet.
Dude,
Well,
Mark,
dude,
thank you so much, man.
man, thank you for making the time. I was really looking forward to this for quite some time. And like I said, I've been watching what you've been doing for years. So like keep it up, dude. It's been so cool to see like the business grow and all the new stuff that you guys are doing. So
Yeah, I'm so happy we got to connect too. Finally have a conversation.
oh yeah, dude. This has been great. So just hang tight, Taylor. Everybody, take care of yourself, take care of each other. We'll see you next time.